Are you a busy woman who at times struggles with reducing your daily stress? Do you know that you need to slow down but do not know how? If you're looking at reducing your daily stress, you're in the right place. My name is Denise Eckert, and I welcome you to the Calm Your Daily Stress podcast. I just love interviewing guests so they can share their stress-reducing tips and techniques with you. Now, if you find this podcast helpful, please share it with someone who struggles with stress, because lowering our stress will make us a better person, a happier partner, mom, friend, neighbor, etc. And the best part is happiness is contagious. Enjoy this episode. It's Denise Eckert, and I love coming on here and sharing different ideas and techniques to help you lower the stress in your life. And today I've got Adam Koren, who's been coaching for more than 20 years and specializes in helping people who get stressed out dealing with their finances. He's the author of the upcoming book, Gentle Money. I love that title.
Thank you.
Now, Adam, what inspired you to do this type of work?
Yeah, what I've discovered is that very few people really offer what I do, which is in that sweet spot between kind of financial planners. They're very happy to talk with you about numbers and plans and all that. But if there's something more heavy or emotional, in most cases, they're going to steer you back towards the numbers. And then therapists, the exact opposite, right? They're happy to talk with you about the dark stuff, but if you actually need to deal with some numbers, in most cases, they're going to steer you back there. So the reason I mention that is sometimes people need both. They need a chance to both talk through their money stuff and to actually deal with it practically. So I love doing both of those things.
Now, a lot of the audience here is self-employed, and I don't know, it's so hard budgeting or looking at our finances because we have different seasons, we have different times in our businesses. Is there any tips or techniques that you can share with the audience today?
Yeah. Well, I'm also an entrepreneur, own my own business, so I definitely am right there. I think my main tip is to get a handle on it, whatever that looks like. So one thing that came up as you were saying that is just really tracking income, especially for those of us where it does go up and down, to really keep careful track. And just partly so we're seeing the patterns, so we're in touch with the reality of the income. That's on one side, and then of course the same on the other, to be in touch with the reality of our spending, our expenses.
Now, for someone who finds looking at their finances really heavy, because I know I'm one of them, I tend to, it's like, no, I don't want to do this. What
Yeah,
what tips can you offer the audience?
yeah. Well, and thanks for sharing that. I mean, I think the first thing is compassion, having compassion for ourselves. I don't know about in Canada, but in the US here, hardly anybody gets any training in personal finance, really hardly anything. And then people rarely talk about it, at least in any detail. And then this third thing took me really years to figure out is that just about everyone that I talk with has an expectation of themselves. I should know what I'm doing with my finances. I'm an adult. But wait a second, where did that come from? We didn't get trained. We don't talk about it. And for many of us, it was either loaded or ignored when we were growing up talking about money. So it's no wonder that many people just don't feel equipped to handle it. But for whatever reason, we seem to have this expectation. So I like to start with compassion. So that's the first thing.
Yeah, and I don't know why talking about finances and money has become so taboo. Do you have any insights on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, it's really loaded. It really, really matters. It's such a central factor for our quality of life and well-being. And this is an area that's rife for judgment, whether someone has too much or too little, or what they do with it, or how they show it, or how they pretend not to have it, or we've got all kinds of judgments about people and their money. So I think that's a big part of why we tend to just shy away from being transparent about what's going on for us with it.
Yeah. Now, I love the title of your book. Can you talk a little bit about what's in your book and who it helps and what?
Sure. Yeah, I mean it's just what we're talking about here. It's for people who hate dealing with their money, but have to. Most financial books are in this kind of macho, like kick ass, take charge. And there are times when that can be really empowering, but for many people that can feel a little hollow if underneath it there's all this fear and anxiety and shame. It can be hard to summon that kind of kick-ass kind of spirit. And so this book is very different. It's gentle. It's coming from a place of compassion, but it's also practical. I have chapters on all different aspects of practical stuff around money, spending, taxes, banking, student loans, retirement, all kinds of things with simple suggestions on all of these things, but coming from this compassion place.
Now, if someone is stressing out financially right
Yeah.
now and they're listening, what tips can you offer?
Yeah.
What point do you actually hire someone? Like if I know for myself when you're starting a business, you can't really afford much. Your budget is almost zero. At
Mhm.
what point should you start introducing people and help into your finances?
Right. Right. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I, what comes up for me is how I relate to this, and I'll answer your question in a minute about tips. Is for me, it's similar around cooking. For whatever reason, I never really learned growing up. I never really figured it out as an adult, and slowly became this source of shame for me. Of like, I'm an adult. Like, why is it so difficult for me to do basic things in the kitchen? And it's become an area where I've had a lot of anxiety about it and frustration with myself, and so I mentioned that because I really relate to the struggle that many of my clients have around their finances because I really know in my bones what that feels like when I'm in the kitchen. And I've brought in just in having integrity in what I do, I've actually hired coaches myself to help me with that. And I've definitely made a lot of progress on that. I don't have the same kind of anxiety I used to. But back to your question, at what point is it a good idea to hire someone? I think a huge part of it is about how important is it to you? How urgent is it? We all have all kinds of challenges in our lives. And there are times when it's just really the right point to say, okay, I got to handle this now. I can't wait anymore because I keep doing the same thing and not making any progress. So when it really is hot like that and it's time to do it, that's the time.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, I mean, I know some of us put it off and sweep it under the carpet,
Right,
and the next thing it's out of control, and it gets out of control very quickly too.
right, right. And it's rarely urgent. Similar to cooking, like there's no real need usually. So so yeah, it's easy to sweep it under the rug. So that's why it's so important to kind of pay attention to that inner sense of like, yeah, I gotta address that if that's true.
Now, are there any tasks or tips that you can provide that we can do, whether on a weekly basis or a daily
Mhm.
basis, to keep on top of this?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's situation is different, but I generally tend to recommend financial tracking apps. I used to always recommend mint.com, but that just shut down 2 months ago. So there are a lot of other apps that are kind of scrambling to kind of take the place as like the best one. I've been using an app called Monarch. I think that's fantastic. I really have come to appreciate what they've done. But there are lots of apps, and the reason I just say get an app is because it just helps you track. The way it works is, for those of you not familiar, is you set up one of these apps, whether it's Monarch or Rocket Money or one of the other ones, and you sync your bank account, your credit cards, your PayPal, Venmo, whatever you're using, and then once you've done all that, you have a dashboard now. Now you can see all your balances at a glance. That can be really useful. And then you can see all your transactions across all of these different accounts all in one list. And then most importantly, they're going to automatically add up all of those things for you. So if you're curious about how much am I spending on food, you can just easily look at the categories. Oh, last month I spent this much. Wow. Okay. I want to change that. So it just really helps you connect with reality to see the actual numbers.
Well, I know for myself, I mean, at the moment, I'm working a couple different jobs and I've almost got three different businesses on the go.
Mm,
So basically, I'm constantly robbing Peter to pay Mary and borrow off Paul sort of thing.
mhm.
And things just are so up and down. I just sometimes don't know how to track it. Like not the tracking part, but how to predict that you're going to have enough at the end of the month to pay these bills.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, I'm not in a profit state. And so I'm just basically paying rent, paying my bills, and
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I just hear the scrappiness that it's calling forth in you. And I can imagine some longing for more predictability and stability too.
well, the thing is, I'm going to be launching a mobile app. So that's where all my finances are going towards right now
Wow.
and
Yeah.
getting it developed. So it's basically, and I'll be honest with you, I do house painting. So I'm a painter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Great.
I go out and I do a job and they're big jobs. So when you get that chunk of money, then
Mhm.
I go pay for the app stuff.
Mm,
And it's
I
a
see.
vicious circle because it's cost me quite a bit of money to develop the app. But
Right.
now it's pretty much done and now I can slowly move forward and start making money. But it's just that transition part that's really hard when you're starting a business.
Yeah. I'm just getting the courage that it must take to take that breath and go like, okay, no, this is important. I need to pay this to move the app forward. And I can imagine your listeners can relate to that of like, yeah, it takes courage to run a business. It takes courage to make investments. I'm almost done writing this book and I'm hiring a book agent and gonna work on getting it published. And that has taken some gulps for me too, in a similar way of like, it's a gamble.
Yeah.
There's no way to know whether it's going to pay off until beforehand. And it's a leap of faith. It's a trust that this feels like the right direction and I'm gonna go for it. And could be wrong.
Well, exactly. Like you're with you writing a book and me developing the app.
Yeah,
And not only the finances that we put towards it, it's also the time where we could
yeah,
be making money doing something else. So
exactly.
that's a chunk of the financials right there. Because if you're spending
Right.
days writing a book or creating the app or doing graphics, where you
Mhm.
could be going out and doing something else and actually bringing home some money,
Right, right.
it's hard. It's difficult.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm
I mean,
right at the brink, so I'm pretty happy. And
good.
I've done it as reasonable as I could because I did a lot of the designing myself, but it's still expensive. But
Yeah, I just keep coming back to as I'm talking to you about checking in within and trusting our intuition about, like you were saying, about time and where is the best use of us? Where do I really need to be spending my time? What do I need to be working on or developing? And there's no right answer to that. You can't ask anybody. No, nobody can tell you the answer to that. So, and with our world being more and more frantic, it can be hard to really pay attention and to listen to that inner sense of what we really need to be doing.
yeah. Okay, so I will be putting all your links everywhere that you're watching or read or listening to this. Now, Adam, we're gonna wrap this up. Do you have words of wisdom for the audience today?
Thanks, Denise. For whatever reason, I don't know why it's unusual for us to bring compassion and gentleness to the realm of finances. Maybe because it feels like this kind of cold, hard cash, tangible place that feels very masculine, actually, very hard. And so my message is about how powerful it can be to bring the opposite, to actually bring some softness and some gentleness to ourselves in these places that can really be difficult. It can be a place where a lot of us suffer. And just starting with gentleness and in that soft place in us. On the other side of that's a different kind of empowerment, a kind of soft, gentle presence to and a courage that comes from that place to face whatever we need to face.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like I find with finances, we're almost self-isolating ourselves because you can't really, as you said, people don't open up about it.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of emotions tied to financials as well. Like there's anger and there's stress and there's worry and fear and then sometimes happiness. And it's a lot to just something that you're dealing with, whether it's by yourself or with a partner, but it's not something that we generally discuss at all.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, that can be healing when we do. Mhm.
Yeah. And as you said earlier in this interview, like we've never really in high school, at some point, we should have courses on personal budgeting,
Right.
finances, because I never learned how to do
Yeah, yeah, me neither. Right.
it.
We're all just left to figure it out on our own without that as adults and somehow with that expectation. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Adam. That was great information because, yeah, finances can be a huge stress factor in our lives. And as I
Yeah.
said, I'll be putting his information everywhere you're watching or listening. So if you have any questions, please reach out and ask Adam the questions. Now, just a gentle reminder to slow down and enjoy life, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Calm Your Daily Stress podcast. Have you ever wondered what your stress personality is? Are you a self-care goddess or a burnout queen? Well, you can find out by taking my free quiz. You just need to go to www.stressquiz.info to find out where you rank. Sending you love and peace, and I'll see you in the next episode.